Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. I'm making this as a video response in an ongoing dialogue that I've been having with a user here on YouTube named Debate with Im. Thank you once again for making another response. I'm glad that we're having this conversation. And I want to thank you first off and apologize for misquoting you in my previous video. If I misrepresented anything that you actually said, I apologize. And I want to thank you for clarifying your position on some of the quotations you said in your video. I did not intentionally misquote you, so I apologize for that. Now, with regards to Ibn Ishaq, you said, why would Ibn Ishaq quote this story? I mean, you clarify that you did not say that Ibn Ishaq wrote the story, but then you say, well, why would he quote the story? If, didn't he think that this would cause problems for future Muslims? Wouldn't this, wouldn't this look really bad for Muhammad, who he really liked who he loved because he's a devout Muslim? And again, as I said in my previous couple videos, I do not think Ibn Ishaq thought this video would make Muhammad look bad. I think he quoted this story, and I think you actually said it yourself. And again, excuse me if I'm misquoting. You said maybe he was just trying to get a really round out picture of Muhammad. Could very well be. Again, he, like Tabari, were just trying to get as many sources as they could without really checking the authenticity. So that could very well be his motive. But I do not think Ibn Ishaq thought this story made Muhammad look bad, especially when the conclusion of the story is that God comes Gabriel comes, and then the correction is made with regards to the two verses. So really, this just shows that God has more power over the devil, and I think that was really the intention of the story, not to discredit Muhammad as a prophet, especially if this is being quoted by a Muslim. Having said that, you came up with an analogy. You said, Ozzy, what if your forefathers, 100 years ago, told stories about a famous person, and you said, with oral transmission, things of this nature, wouldn't the people nearest to the source, like let's say this famous person, wouldn't those stories be more accurate than things that came later? Well, I can agree with you for the most part. However, let's say I had a grandfather, or let's just say great 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 grandfather, and I was told my great 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 grandfather was a liar, that nobody in the family trusted him, that he was prone to making things up, that fabricating the truth. Why would I, as his descendant, if we're going with your analogy, why would I trust him? Why would I trust any story that he said if my family has deemed him a liar and someone who fabricates stories about our family? Why? Why would I believe that? Why would I believe him if that's the consensus of my family? And that's the same way with your analogy, and I would use your analogy now with Wukidi. Wukidi was considered a liar and a person who fabricated hadiths. And so therefore he's rejected by all classical and modern scholars. And so therefore that's how I view your analogy, and that's how I would answer that. I hope I've quoted your analogy correctly. You say both Bukhari and Muslim, they rejected the hadiths based on the fact that they were not true. Yes, that's the point. And again, I would encourage you to look in the science of hadith. Now, I'm going to post you in the description section a link to IslamicAwareness.org, and they have a whole section about the science of hadith, and I really encourage you to read their articles, for your benefit, of course. You say that the hadiths were written after Ibn Ishaq, and I believe you say that. I know you mentioned Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, and I'm pretty sure you said the hadiths were written after. I have a book here called The Atlas of the Prophet's Biography, and this is edited by a major scholar, a modern scholar in Saudi Arabia today, and he quotes several sources that talk about hadith collections that were around during the Prophet's time. So really, this is not true. This is actually a misconception. Many people think that the hadiths were not actually written down until 200 years, like you say yourself, 200, 300 years after the Prophet. It's actually not true. We know for a fact that, let's see here, some of the earliest hadith collections were around during his time, and I'm going to quote some of the earliest biographers here. For an example, as I mentioned, Abin ibn Uthman ibn Affan. He not only did he write about the Prophet's life, but he also wrote down hadiths. Urwa ibn az-Zabari also wrote down hadiths, and so did Wahib ibn Munahib. These three individuals were, prior to Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, they wrote down hadiths. Also, I also encourage you to look in the link I give you for IslamicAwareness.org. They have a lot of articles giving you even earlier people who transmitted hadiths, who actually wrote them down. So that is to respond to you on that level. Now, You say, you ask me, oh, let's see here. You're correcting the oral transmission, and so you mentioned, well, isn't it interesting? You made this comment. You said, isn't it interesting that we have um, so many more stories being told, or that there are so many more hadiths that were around after the fact, that were actually during the time of Bukhari and Muslim. And the thing is that these stories, it's not the fact that these stories weren't around, or that people were inventing these stories during the time of Bukhari and Muslim. It's just that at the time of Bukhari and Muslim, there were so many stories that they had to come up with some sort of science, some sort of way to sift through all of the hadiths and find out which ones were authentic. And again, I really encourage you to go to that link that I'm going to provide in the description section, islamicawareness.org. A lot of their articles talk about how this was done. So then you say, let's see here. Then you mention, you said you reject Ibn Ishaq over, and I do. I reject. I definitely think that Bukhari and Muslim are definitely above Ibn Ishaq in authenticity, because first off, Bukhari and Muslim followed their collections based on the science of Hadith. Whereas Ibn Ishaq did not. Ibn Ishaq did not verify any of his traditions that he included in his biography. He just added whatever he wanted, and so did Tabari. So that's why these two sources are not considered authentic. This is why biographies in Islam are a third-level source of material, not even on the level of the Hadith collections. Then you say something interesting. You say that Muhammad thought Gabriel was Satan. I hope I'm quoting you correctly. Again, tell me if I'm wrong. You said Muhammad thought Gabriel was Satan. And I checked Sahih Bukhari, the hadiths about the commencement of the revelation of the Quran, when he first met Gabriel. Also Sahih Muslim, even Ibn Ishaq. And these three sources do not at any time show Muhammad thought that Gabriel was Satan. Yet you say that a number of times. He thought that he was meeting Satan, or he thought Gabriel was Satan. I don't know what your sources are for that. So if you could provide your sources, that would be great. Now you say Allah didn't know that he couldn't read. You say that he was an ummi and he was illiterate. And you say that Allah didn't know that he could read because he has Gabriel command him to read. Well, Iqra has a couple meanings. Iqra does mean read, but it means recite as well. And when you read the surah that says read in the name of your Lord, many translations have in parentheses read, recite, and so it has multiple meanings. Repeat, things like this. And it's obvious when you read the story, perhaps Gabriel was saying to him, read. And he thought, is he telling me I can't read? Read. Well, I can't read. Read. Well, I can't read. And then it says, read, and he squeezes him, and Muhammad recites. He repeats what Gabriel was trying to convey to him. It's obvious that Gabriel was telling him, recite, but the prophet thought that he was saying, read. You have to read the whole story. You have to read the whole story. Don't just quote a part of it and then say, well, Allah didn't know that he was illiterate. Iqra has multiple meanings. You say the people in Mecca thought he was possessed. That's true. But Allah came to his aid every time. Allah came to him saying that was false, that he was actually a messenger of God, that he wasn't possessed. And then you go on and on about the superstitions. You say, well, he believed in so many superstitions. Why is that? I don't see the problem with a 7th century Arab believing in certain superstitions. I mean, you think they're absurd, but that's your opinion. And then you assume that metaphors are a result that Islamic scholars are having issues with the hadiths. That's not true. There are many hadiths that are considered metaphorical, but there are many that are considered literal. And you mentioned one hadith about the angels coming and asking, well, the person in the womb, will they be a good person or a bad person? I don't see what the problem with that is, if people actually believe that. Many people believe in things like this. And finally, I'm going to say that Ibn Ishaq's works are embodied in two people's works, Tabari and Ibn Hisham. Ibn Hisham wrote his own biography based on a lot of things that Ibn Ishaq wrote, and we come to find out that in Ibn Hisham, the Satanic Verse story isn't there. And Ibn Hisham's biography is considered more authentic, one of the most authentic biographies that exists for the Prophet. Yet Tabari's history, where he admits that he would even drag in unauthentic sources, also has the story of the Satanic Verses from Ibn Ishaq. We don't even have Ibn Ishaq's works in their entirety. It's embodied in these two people's works. Yet Ibn Hisham rejects it because he was knowledgeable of Hadith and science of Hadith. Tabari was not. Tabari did not really care for that sort of thing. So I hope this has been a valid response to you. I look forward to your response as well. Peace be with you all.